In 1988, Johan Cruyff became the manager of Barcelona. A few days after taking the job, he was walking around the club's facilities, trying to get a better understanding of what he was working with. During that walk, he ended up at the Estadi Mini, a small stadium located just a few minutes away from Camp Nou. Barcelona B were playing a match that day, so Cruyff decided to sit down and watch. At first, it was just another academy game, but after a few minutes, one player caught his attention, a young midfielder playing on the right side of midfield. He wasn't the quickest player on the pitch, he wasn't the strongest, he wasn't even the most talented player in the traditional sense, but there was something different about him. Every time he received the ball, he seemed to know exactly what was going to happen next. He always found space, he always found the right pass, and he always seemed one step ahead of everybody else. So Cruyff turned to Barcelona B manager Charlie Rexic and asked, "Who is that kid?" Rexic told him his name and explained that he was one of the academy's most intelligent young players. Cruyff watched for a few more minutes. Then he said something interesting. "Move him into the middle. Put him in the pivot." Rexic did exactly that. The player had never really played there before. He was only 17 years old, but almost immediately, he looked completely comfortable, as if he'd been playing that position his entire life. Cruyff kept watching. Then eventually, he turned back to Rexic and said, "Fast track him." That 17-year-old kid was Pep Guardiola. And looking back now, that moment feels almost unbelievable, because what Cruyff was watching wasn't just a future Barcelona player. He was watching the future of football. When people talk about Pep Guardiola, they usually start with the trophies, the Champions Leagues, the trebles, the Premier League titles, the 100-point season, the domination. But that's not the most interesting part of the story. The interesting part is how a skinny kid from a small town called Santpedor became the most influential football manager of his generation. Because nothing about young Pep Guardiola looked extraordinary. He wasn't fast, he wasn't powerful, he wasn't scoring 30 goals a season. Yet somehow, Johan Cruyff looked at him and immediately saw something that almost nobody else did. And that decision would end up changing football forever. Cruyff's decision changed Pep Guardiola's life. Within 2 years, he had gone from playing youth football to becoming a key part of Barcelona's first team. And not just any Barcelona team, Cruyff's dream team. The side that won 4 consecutive La Liga titles. The side that delivered Barcelona's first European Cup. A team filled with stars. Romario, Michael Laudrup, Ronald Koeman, Hristo Stoichkov. Yet somehow, one of the most important players in that team was a skinny midfielder who looked like he'd lose a wrestling match against half the mascots in La Liga. Because Pep's greatest weapon wasn't his body, it was his brain. Cruyff once called him the interpreter of my ideas. Pep understood football differently. While other players focused on what was happening, Pep was obsessed with why it was happening. Why was this player moving there? Why was that defender pressing? Why was that passing lane opening? Everything fascinated him. Every training session became a lesson. Every match became an education. And without even realizing it, Pep was already preparing for the second phase of his football life. The problem was, football had other plans. By the late 1990s, injuries started catching up with him. His knees were constantly causing problems. Training became harder. Recovery took longer. The body that had helped him become one of Spain's best midfielders was slowly beginning to betray him. And eventually, after 11 years with Barcelona, Pep left. For most players, this would have been the beginning of the end. For Pep Guardiola, it was the beginning of something much bigger. He moved to Italy, first Brescia, then Roma, then back to Brescia again. After that came spells in Qatar and Mexico. And if you just look at the clubs, it might seem like his career was fading away. But something important was happening. Pep wasn't just playing football anymore, he was studying it. In Italy, he became fascinated by defensive structure, how teams controlled space, how they defended as a unit, how they suffocated opponents without even touching the ball. In Qatar, he experienced a completely different football culture. In Mexico, another one. Every country taught him something new. Every manager gave him another perspective. Every training session added another piece to the puzzle. By the time he retired in 2006, Pep Guardiola wasn't just a former footballer. He was a football obsessive, a man who couldn't stop thinking about the game, a man whose brain was already operating like a coach. And 1 year later, he got his chance. In 2007, Barcelona president Joan Laporta handed Guardiola the Barcelona B job. Third division football, no glamour, no spotlight, no packed Camp Nou, just academy players trying to make a name for themselves. Most people saw it as a small opportunity. Pep saw it as a laboratory. Within a single season, Barcelona B were promoted. The football was impressive, the players were developing, and upstairs, something interesting was happening. The first team was falling apart. Frank Rijkaard's era was coming to an end. Results were getting worse. The dressing room wasn't what it used to be. The energy around the club had changed. Barcelona needed a reset. And then, Joan Laporta made one of the biggest gambles in modern football history. He gave the job to Pep Guardiola, 37 years old. 1 season of managerial experience. Never managed in the top flight. Never managed in Europe. Never managed a single Champions League game. Nothing. Most people thought Barcelona had completely lost their minds. Imagine replacing an established manager with someone who had only coached in the 3rd division, at one of the biggest clubs in world football. The pressure was enormous. The expectations were ridiculous. And somehow, Pep made things even worse. Because the first thing he did wasn't sign a superstar. The first thing Pep Guardiola did was get rid of Ronaldinho. And Barcelona fans absolutely hated it. Just like that, Deco left too. Another key figure from Barcelona's Champions League winning side. Suddenly, 2 of the biggest names in the dressing room were gone, and Barcelona fans were furious. It felt arrogant, it felt risky, and then things got even worse. Barcelona lost their opening league game to Numancia, a newly promoted side. Then they drew their second game, 1 point from 2 matches. Ronaldinho was gone. Deco was gone. The results were terrible, and people were already questioning whether Laporta had made a huge mistake. Football moves fast, but Pep stayed calm. Because while everyone else was looking at results, Pep was looking at ideas. Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Busquets, Eto'o, Henry. They weren't just winning games anymore. They were overwhelming teams. The football was beautiful. The movement was relentless. And by the end of the season, Barcelona had made history. La Liga, Copa del Rey, Champions League. The treble, the first treble ever won by a Spanish club. And Pep Guardiola had done it in his first season. His first season. Think about how ridiculous that is. 1 year earlier, he was coaching in the 3rd division. Now he was standing on top of European football. And somehow, the scary part was that he was only getting started. Because the Barcelona that won the treble wasn't even the best Barcelona team Pep Guardiola would build. And that's the crazy thing. Most managers spend their entire careers trying to build one great team. Pep built one almost immediately, then somehow made it even better. By 2011, Barcelona had become football's ultimate machine. Messi was the best player in the world. Xavi and Iniesta were controlling games like they had a remote control. Busquets was quietly running everything from behind them, and Pep's system had reached its final form. The football was beautiful. The football was ruthless. And most importantly, the football was winning. Barcelona won 14 trophies in just 4 seasons under Guardiola. 14. At one point, Sir Alex Ferguson called them the best team he'd ever faced after Barcelona dismantled Manchester United in the Champions League final. Think about that. The greatest manager in Premier League history, and even he admitted he'd never seen anything like it. It felt like the beginning of a dynasty. Messi was still young. The squad was still stacked with world-class talent, and Pep was only in his early 40s. Then he shocked everyone. He walked away. He simply felt exhausted, mentally exhausted. The pressure of managing Barcelona had finally caught up with him. For 4 years, football had completely consumed his life. So in 2012, Pep Guardiola stepped down as Barcelona manager. At the time, it felt impossible. The best manager in world football, just walking away. But in reality, Pep wasn't finished. He was recharging, because 1 year later, he returned, and his next challenge wasn't rebuilding a club. It was rebuilding an entire football culture. In 2013, Pep Guardiola became Bayern Munich manager. Now here's what made this move fascinating. Barcelona already played football the way Pep wanted. Bayern didn't. German football had always been different. More direct, more physical, more aggressive. The focus was intensity, transitions, counterattacks, winning second balls. Pep arrived and basically asked, what if we controlled everything instead? Suddenly, Bayern started playing a completely different game. Possession became king. Positional play became king. Control became king. Players who were already world-class somehow became even better. Philipp Lahm, one of the greatest fullbacks ever. Pep turned him into a midfielder, and somehow, he looked world-class there too. A few years later, we'd see something similar happen with Joshua Kimmich, because that's what Pep does. He sees players differently. Where everyone else sees a right back, Pep sees a midfielder. Where everyone else sees a winger, Pep sees a false nine. Where everyone else sees a problem, Pep sees an opportunity. And slowly, Bayern evolved. They won league title after league title, but the trophies almost weren't the most impressive part. The real story was the influence. Because Pep didn't just change Bayern Munich, he changed Germany. You could see it everywhere. In the way teams built attacks, in the way midfielders positioned themselves, in the way defenders used the ball. Even Germany's 2014 World Cup winning squad carried elements of Guardiola's ideas. Not because Pep managed Germany, but because he had changed Bayern, and Bayern had changed German football. That's how powerful his influence had become. 3 years. That's all he spent in Germany. 3 years. And yet, he left behind ideas that would still be visible long after he was gone. Then came the move that would define his legacy forever. Manchester City. Because Barcelona gave Pep greatness, Bayern proved his ideas could travel. Manchester City would become his masterpiece. Because when Pep Guardiola arrived at Manchester City in 2016, he wasn't walking into Barcelona, and he wasn't walking into Bayern Munich. Those clubs were already giants, already institutions, already part of football royalty. Manchester City was different. Yes, they had won Premier League titles. Yes, they had money. Yes, they were growing fast, but they still hadn't conquered Europe. They still hadn't built a lasting football identity, and Pep saw an opportunity not to manage a great club, to create one. His first season wasn't perfect. In fact, by Pep standards, it was a disaster. No trophies, third place, his lowest league finish ever. Suddenly, the critics came flying out, but Pep didn't panic. And 1 year later, the Premier League found out exactly what that future looked like. 100 points. Let that sink in. 100. Nobody had ever done it before. Nobody has done it since. Manchester City won 32 league games, scored 106 goals, broke record after record after record, and suddenly the debate wasn't whether Pep could succeed in England. The debate was whether anyone could stop him. Then came Liverpool. Then came Jurgen Klopp, and football got one of its greatest rivalries, because unlike everyone else, Klopp had an answer. His Liverpool side were relentless, and for years, they pushed Manchester City to their absolute limit. But there was still one thing missing: the Champions League. For years, it felt cursed. Tottenham, Lyon, Chelsea, Real Madrid. Every season ended in heartbreak. Sometimes it was bad luck. Sometimes it was mistakes. Sometimes football was simply cruel. For a moment, it genuinely felt like the Champions League was the one trophy Pep could never deliver to Manchester City. But great teams don't stop knocking, and eventually, the door opens. The perfect City team: Haaland, De Bruyne, Rodri, Bernardo Silva, Ruben Diaz, John Stones, Kyle Walker. Years of planning, years of rebuilding, years of heartbreak, all leading to one night in Istanbul. And when Rodri's shot found the corner of the net against Inter Milan, everything changed. Manchester City were champions of Europe. Finally, the treble was complete. The mission was complete. The club Pep arrived to build had become exactly what he envisioned: a European superpower, an institution, a footballing empire. And honestly, that might be Pep Guardiola's greatest achievement. Not the trophies, not the records, not even the trebles. It's what he left behind. Because look around football today. Arteta, Maresca, Xabi Alonso, Vincent Kompany. Managers influenced by Pep. Teams influenced by Pep. Entire academies influenced by Pep. You see it everywhere. Fullbacks moving into midfield. Goalkeepers acting like playmakers. Center backs stepping into midfield. Positional play, high pressing, control through possession. Whether people love Pep Guardiola or hate him, modern football looks the way it does because of him. And that's where the story comes full circle. Back to that youth game in Barcelona. Back to Johan Cruyff. Back to a 17-year-old kid playing on the right side of midfield. Because when Cruyff watched Pep Guardiola for the first time, he wasn't just spotting a talented footballer. He was spotting an idea that would eventually spread across Spain, across Germany, across England, and eventually across the entire sport. Maybe that's why Cruyff told Charlie Rekik to fast-track him. Maybe he saw something nobody else could. Because decades later, every inverted fullback, every false nine, every goalkeeper playing out from the back, every team obsessed with controlling possession, carries a little piece of Pep Guardiola. And that's why his legacy isn't measured in trophies. It's measured in influence. Because trophies can be matched, records can be broken, but changing football forever, very few people ever get to do that. Pep Guardiola did. And football will never be the same again. Now, if you want to see the unbelievable story of how Manchester City built a football empire, click this video right here.